Está funcionando ahora, gracias.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Can you see my screen? Welcome to the October 13th Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee meeting. This meeting is being recorded. We will post the recording to our website within 7 business days. Anybody in the audience that would like to speak? We will have certain comment periods throughout the meeting, and at that point, we will allow those in the attendee pool out in the audience to ask questions and have time for public comment. If you're having any issues, we are going to direct you back to Zoom for support during this meeting. We are utilizing Spanish translation services. Panelists and attendees need to actively select between the Spanish or the English room, and there's an option to toggle between the two during the meeting. Just as a best practice, please speak clearly and in a normal tone. One person should speak at a time, and the raise the hand feature is available. You can use it to ask questions. Just some committee bylaws on public comment. Only the committee chair may recognize a public attendee. And as I stated earlier, there is a designated time on the agenda to allow the audience to participate. And we can utilize the raise the hand feature this evening as well. With that, I'm going to move into roll call. Sorry, as I juggle screens here. Starting first with the chair, Ashwin.
Hi, I'm Ashwin Nagaraja, public member and chair.
Our vice chair, Sandra.
She's not here today, Erin.
Okay, thanks. I can't see the screen. Next up, we have our community member, Leslie.
Hi.
And another community member, Hannah Carlson.
Hello.
Staff member, Tom.
Here. Hi, everybody.
Community member, Myra, sorry.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah.
Next community member is Pete.
I'm here in audio only.
Next up is community member Sue.
Hi, I'm here. Thank you.
And then we have our industry committee member, Vinod.
Good evening, everybody present.
Great, thanks everyone. I'm gonna turn it over to the chair.
Well, welcome everybody. So the first item on the agenda is the crack communications and solid waste recycling program updates. I don't know if there's a verbal update this time.
Sure, I can go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, or I guess good evening, everybody. Good to see you all. Just a couple quick updates for us. I just wanted to provide an update related to or reflect on our tour 2 weeks ago, I guess now already. I thought it was a great experience. Most everybody got to go. Myra, we missed you. I know you had an awesome opportunity for yourself, so congratulations on that. We were able to see the landfill that we're going to be talking about this evening. We also went to Far West Recycling. Thank you, Vinod, for your hospitality and showing us the facility, and also to the Recology Compost facility. So I thought it was a great tour. We learned a lot. It was nice to see everybody in person. It reminds me how fun it is to be with folks in person and see everybody. So thinking about after that meeting, maybe it would be nice to do like a once a quarter or maybe twice a year if it's whatever the committee thinks is the best, to have an in-person meeting maybe, and we could maybe even cater that meeting or provide dinner for that meeting. So we should talk about that and think about it and see what everyone's opinion is. Maybe Kathy in a follow-up email can kind of take a poll on what everyone thinks about that as an opportunity. I just also wanted to share a quick update on the Recycling Modernization Act work. That continues to be a body of work, a large body of work for the DEQ, and they're moving towards some rulemaking packages that are going to be presented to the Rulemaking Advisory Committee and the Recycle, or used to be called ORSAC. I don't know what it's called anymore. It's the Oregon Recycling Advisory Committee. Vinod, what's it called? Is that it?
I get mixed up too. I think they're just calling it the Recycling Advisory Committee.
Okay. Either way, they're going to be talking about some rules in early September, I think, that are going to include some pretty significant thing. I mean, early 2023, they're going to include some pretty significant milestones, like recommendations to the EQC on the Uniform Statewide Collection List, which is a big part of our program. Producer responsibility fees and organizational structures for the producer responsibility organizations, and local government compensation as it relates to program expansion and potentially contamination reduction. So we're following that very closely. There is a series of local government meetings coming up, or opportunities, and it was kind of funny because when I saw the invite, it came from intern Hannah Carlson. So Hannah is working with DQ and helping them as an intern from PSU, and there is a series of meetings coming up identified towards local governments and service providers that provide services to local governments. So I want you all to think of yourselves as local government representatives, because that's what you're doing. You're representing and you're providing advice to Washington County. So those meetings are certainly something that you all can attend, and Kathy will get out the list of those meetings and links to all of their invites to you all in the follow-up as well. So please attend if you have the time and you're interested. I think it's going to be an exciting journey. We've been talking with the DQ about maybe somebody coming in and talking with our committee, but I think those meetings might actually fill that opportunity as well. So we don't have to, I know they're busy and they have a lot of folks working full steam ahead on these rulemakings. Another quick update on Recycle Plus program. Things keep going pretty well. We have about 820 folks signed up right now, and we was told by one of our providers today they owe us a list of about 100. So we're looking forward to hitting maybe 1,000 milestone here in the next month or two, which would be pretty exciting. We're going to be providing an update to our board on kind of how things are going since the rollout. Some of the kinks we've worked through in terms of the bag quality provided by some of the providers in the beginning, and more online pickup options. But we've seen complaints dramatically decrease since we've worked with a couple of the providers to up the bag game and also get those online scheduling options set up. So we're looking forward to that, keep growing. Another quick update I would give, and I think this is my last one, is Aaron and I have been working closely with Community Action Organization to execute a contract for the reduced rate program. And so we are on track to have a contract in place in the next 3 to 4 weeks, probably, with Community Action. And they are going to be administering our reduced rate, low income rate program that is set to be an option available in January of 2023. So after we get that kind of mechanism in place and the back end figured out on how we're going to do those screenings and evaluations, we'll start working on promotion strategies and with the haulers on how do we let folks know about this new option for reduced rate garbage programs. So Kathy, do you have anything else to add for the committee? I'll go ahead and stop talking here.
Yeah, I just have a few committee news calendar updates. As a follow-up to the Recycling Modernization Act meetings, they occur from the 1st of November through the 15th, several in the morning and a couple in the afternoon. So what I'll just send out the whole menu. And then if you're interested, you can click directly on the link and they'll send you a confirmation email once they've received your request. So I'll do that. I'll also do the poll about a future in-person meeting and how the group feels about that and the frequency, et cetera. I wanted to mention that our open public position for the committee remains open. So I had sent you the link before to the application page. Please forward it on to friends, family, people that you think might be interested. It would be good to get up to a full committee. It's helpful with the quorum, plus just having another voice is always a good thing. So I'll include that in my host meeting email as well, a reminder about that. Next month at the meeting, we will have an action item again. It's a proposed certificate transfer. So that requires a recommendation from this committee that then would go to the board regarding the transfer of a certificate to another certificate holder. So in December right now, we don't have an action item, just FYI, but we do in November. So other than that, that's really all the news I have, other than I continue to seek topics that you all might have that you'd like to have someone come and give a talk on or a presentation. We're always looking for working on the interests of the committee. So shoot me an email anytime and I'll see what I can do. And that's it for me.
I had one other one that I reminded myself of real quick. Sorry. We do finally now have a contract executed or an IGA executed with Metro for the bulky waste voucher program. So this is a reminder, these are going to be collection vouchers for bulky waste materials that we're going to be working in what Metro calls the equity focus areas, and then maybe focusing on some multifamily households to provide bulky waste collection vouchers. So essentially there'll be like a receipt or a coupon for up to 3 bulky items to be picked up by your franchise service provider. And we'll be working closely with property managers to kind of coordinate those types of events at the multifamily properties, and then also getting some of those out into the regular households in those focus areas. We have about $150,000 worth of bulky waste collection to spend on that project. So we're looking forward to that. And hopefully we can make a dent in some of the stuff stored in people's garages or sheds or wherever it is stored. When you live in a smaller multifamily community, you don't know how to get rid of it, or those enclosures that have piled up with stuff. So that we're excited to get that going. And I'll stop there. Anything from the committee?
Yeah, so there's opportunity for anyone from the committee. They want to share news as well. It seemed like there's a lot of busyness on the staff side, so that's good. Assume nothing from the committee. So the next item is oral communication. Erin, if anybody is signed up.
We don't have anybody signed up. Does anybody in the audience?
There are two people there.
If you would like to comment, you can certainly, the raise your hand feature should be available.
I would just note Nick Godfrey is in the audience, and Nick is the general manager of the Hillsboro Landfill, and that's our action item. So he was also on the tour with us. So if it's up to you, Ashvin, as chair, if you want to offer Nick an opportunity to talk for the action item or anything along those lines. So leave that up to you. And I guess up to Nick if he wants to do it as well.
Yeah, definitely we'd like to give Nick the floor if he has something to say on this topic. We can also touch on it during the action item as well. So we can always leave it for that.
Let's do that. We'll let Kathy do the staff report, and then we can talk about it and see if Nick has anything to add.
Yeah, let's jump into it then.
Thank you. My name is Kathy Folsom, and I'm part of the HHS staff. I'm here tonight to present the proposed franchise agreement renewal for Hillsboro Landfill, Inc. Hillsboro Landfill is a wholly owned subsidiary of Waste Management of Oregon, and it's the operator of the Hillsboro Landfill facility, and they've submitted an application for renewal of their existing franchise agreement with the county. The current agreement expires November 30th, 2022. Washington County Code Chapter 808, the disposal code, directs the application process and requires that your committee make certain findings. These findings and your recommendation will be provided to the Washington County Board of Commissioners for their consideration. Upon receipt of the application on April 6, 2022, staff began its review of the facility application. In addition to our review, The code requires that Land Use and Transportation, County Council, and any other agencies with legal authority review the application as well. Pursuant to this direction, County Council determined that as a franchise agreement currently exists with the applicant, and the applicant has not proposed a significant change in the nature of the operations, the application should be considered a renewal. Land Use and Transportation determined that the landfill is in good standing with LUT. Clean Water Services determined that Hillsboro landfill is in conformance and compliance with all Clean Water Service District's rules and permit requirements. And the Oregon DEQ, although not a county department, they do regulate Hillsboro landfill, and they hold 2 permits with the facility, all considered in good standing. Both a solid waste disposal site permit renewal application and an air contaminant discharge permit renewal application have been filed by Hillsboro landfill, and the status of those permits are under review as of the date of this report. All permit conditions remain in effect until such time as the renewed permits are issued by the DEQ under state law. The Solid Waste and Recycling Division, your committee, and ultimately the board's review is guided by the criterion contained in Chapter 808 and outlined in Attachment A to the staff report. Additionally, code enforcement staff reviewed complaint records and found that the site is currently operating in compliance with the existing franchise agreement. Through the review of the renewal application, staff proposes that the applicant does meet all relevant criteria for renewal. Turning to the franchise agreement terms and conditions, proposed changes to the current agreement include an updated maximum rate, an increase to the tonnage cap, clarifications regarding additional conditions, and the addition of a facility special event. There are other minor revisions to terms and conditions that will be part of the renewed franchise agreement. First, the updated maximum rate. Per the existing franchise agreement, the allowed processed dry waste maximum rate is adjusted each year by 85% of the change in the consumer price index to arrive at a base level maximum rate. For 2022, the new rate as calculated is $75.16 a ton, which has been reflected in the agreement. Second, the tonnage cap. There are significant changes to this section in response to a request from the franchisee for an increase in the tonnage cap. Staff is proposing to increase the annual maximum tonnage from 400,000 to 550,000 tons. Staff reviewed historical data and found that the tonnage accepted has steadily increased over the last 10 years. Further, in 2022, the landfill is very close to bumping up against the ceiling of the tonnage cap and would need to cease accepting waste in the absence of an increase in the tonnage cap. Additionally, staff in the Hillsboro landfill are proposing adding a tonnage cap review language that is meant to allow Hillsboro landfill a shorter county review period if reported tonnage begins to get closer to the tonnage cap over 2 consecutive quarters in the future. Third, the additional conditions. Staff has added additional conditions that clarify the requirement to file with the county any permits or changes in permits issued by other regulatory bodies. And finally, the special events section. The proposed franchise agreement now includes a requirement that Hillsboro landfill will support Washington County's public outreach by facilitating an annual outreach day to support residents living within an agreed upon proximity to the landfill. This might include a bulky item drop-off or similar event. Based on the review of the application, the proposed findings outlined in Attachment A to the staff report, and the responses received from permitting authorities, staff recommends that the Washington County Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee favorably recommend that the Washington County Board of County Commissioners approve the renewal of the Washington County Solid Waste Franchise Agreement currently issued to Hillsboro Landfill, Inc. to operate the Hillsboro Landfill Solid Waste Disposal Site for a term of 10 years through November 30th, 2032. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. And as Tom mentioned, Nick Godfrey, Senior District Manager with Hillsboro Landfill, is also available.
We can open it up to the committee for discussion and questions. Start by saying that, you know, it was a nice opportunity for all of us to come visit the landfill. I think seeing it with our own eyes was really, really interesting. You know, really actually can call the landfill beautiful after being there. Very peaceful and nice. So
thank you. That means the world to me. That's our goal. So.
One thing I do want to point out, and I think be part of our conversation is, and we talked about this when we were on site, is that there's really two facilities co-located there. So we have the Tualatin Valley Waste Recovery Facility and then the Hillsboro Landfill. So those are very distinct operations, and I know they look the same from the outside looking in, but when we're evaluating this franchise agreement, we really do need to focus on the landfill itself and not necessarily the operations of TBWR. But that doesn't mean that some of the issues related to both facilities coexist, but it's also important to distinguish that, I think, in our heads.
Yeah. Thanks for that clarification. Leslie, you want to go ahead? Question?
Yeah, I just had a question. Regardless of which way we end up deciding, and it seems favorable at this point, is there, like, what would happen if we didn't accept the increase of tonnage? Like, and it sounds like they would just have to be turning away like refuse, but what would the outcome of that be?
That's a great question. Do you guys want to take that, Tom? Or Tom?
No, Nick, why don't you take that? It's
sorry, that question was for anyone, by the way.
I can take.
So there are other facilities that are much further away. We are strategically located. You know, a couple of the reasons for the increase, you know, we've got urban growth, industrial growth, Intel, Amazon, all those sorts of things. We are a C&D facility. So when we think about any potential impacts to the community, you know, we don't have the putrescible waste that comes in. I think most everybody that was on the tour smelled pretty nice. But to answer your question, it would cost more to go elsewhere. You know, every business would incur that cost. And not only that, but also in trucking, you can go on here. So the environmental impact in a carbon footprint for the waste being hauled to another site would be larger too. Yeah.
So I can add a little context from our perspective too on this tonnage cap discussion. You know, I think it's important. A couple things are really important to note. One is the DQ does not set tonnage caps on disposal sites. So that is not a standard practice in a DQ permit. So that is something that we have in our franchise agreements, and we think of our franchise agreements as we talked about this on the tour a little bit, like host community agreements. So what we're doing is we're trying to act as ensure that this facility is a good neighbor to our community and it's not going to overburden the neighbors and our approximate community. So things we are concerned about with tonnage, I will say one is traffic, one is noise, hours of operation, how long it's working, what type of vehicles and equipment are running around on the face or on the landfill. Track out onto Minter Bridge Road is a concern with increased traffic and more trucks in the facility. Odor could be another issue, just with more material. I think that maybe is closer related to some of the operations of Tualatin Valley Waste Recovery. That yard debris is not part of Hillsboro Landfill, but ultimately they are taking material that might be odorous. Those are some of the things. Noise, I think, is a concern that came up. So those are some of the community impacts that we are kind of associating that potentially increase. So in our evaluation at staff level, we looked at it and we looked back at what we've heard from the community so far, and we've heard very little from the community, and that's very comforting to us. We also know from that Hillsboro Landfill works to be a good neighbor, and we have the ability to kind of manage their operations in terms of, we have a noise control processes and codes that we could work with them on if there was a concern with increased noise and traffic. So we feel pretty confident that this 37% increase in tonnage capacity is not going to significantly impact the neighbor. I would also say, and Nick, maybe you can speak to this, that it's not like the landfill is going to start taking 550,000 tons in 2023. So I think it's going to take time. It's a 10-year agreement. When we entered into the current agreement, they were averaging about 250 tons a year, and now they're averaging about 400,000. So that we've seen about 150,000 ton increase over the last 10 years, and maybe this is going to be a similar trajectory over the next 10 years. The other part of it that I learned from DEQ, which I didn't really know, and maybe Nick could speak to this too, is that DEQ's oversight of tonnage is more related to their engineering capacity. So when the landfill builds a new cell, DEQ reviews and approves the kind of the engineering plans for that cell. So they couldn't turn into a mega landfill tomorrow because they don't have the engineered capacity to do that. And DEQ is working with the facility to kind of work through the engineering and the cell design and development of that. So that is another kind of factor that controls and limits the ability to kind of start ramping things up really immediately. So I don't know, Nick, if there's something there you want to talk about on that side of things too.
Yeah, I think you hit all the topics there. I mean, if we were to bring in an additional, 300,000 or 150,000 tons, where would we put it? We don't necessarily have the space yet to design and build that cell currently. So this is thinking 10 years in advance, right? So if we have a 10-year permit, we want to think 5 or 6 years, what's that going to look like? So yeah, it's a good point. We don't really plan on jumping right now. We're looking for the life of the permit. Regarding incoming traffic and some of that, over the past 10 years, we've gone from a large amount of commercial trucks and smaller businesses to material coming from other facilities, material recovery facilities or transfer stations, as we get a little bit better on how we're transporting our waste. So rather than, say 300 trucks coming in, those are going to a local material or transfer station, and then we're bringing that in from a hauling company in a transfer trailer that's 23 tons or 24 tons versus half a ton each. So the vehicle traffic actually doesn't necessarily increase with the increased tons because we're becoming more environmentally conscious on how we're transporting those tons. Everything else, I think you hammered pretty well. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't really have a question. I would just echo what you said. So for us, for example, we used to send ours in drop boxes there. So we went from 6, 7 drop boxes to 1 or 2 trucks a week. So that reduced that traffic a lot just by changing the way we shipped it.
Yeah, and if you saw the tipper operation, those big transfer trailers that take 23 tons, they basically decouple from the tractor as they come to the landfill, and it just sort of tips it up off the back end of it. Pretty amazing operation, and it really reduces the amount of traffic on the road.
Do you guys have like proactive and reactive type measures that you take to deal with the traffic? I'm not sure like how forecastable it is for you to know how many trucks are coming in that day. And if traffic starts to back up, how exactly do you monitor and deal with that situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have 4 people on our scale when it's fully staffed. If anybody's looking, knows of anybody, we are still looking for an additional person. And it's very difficult to find. Back to the topic here. As we start to see that we have a very long entrance way before the scale house, so we can pack 15, 20 vehicles in before we get out towards anywhere near the road. At that point, we can double up those lanes. So we keep an eye on it just by the nature of where the scale is and the front entrance. And the moment it gets within any boundary, we're calling folks to come out and do traffic control. And then, like I said before as well, the ability to bring in loads and transfer trailers greatly reduces the amount of traffic we have in at any given time. We do still have event jobs. So, if we're bringing in soil from somewhere or something to that effect, there might be an additional amount of traffic on the road in the lanes for a period of time. But we do our best to try and minimize that. Yeah.
And do you guys have like any method to forecast how many trucks you're will be getting in a day, especially as like you talk about like Amazon and Intel kind of increasing their needs? Yeah, so we have a number of software systems, so we could forecast based on the past week, past month. Tuesday might be a little more busy than Monday, but normally we're never reaching the impact of utilizing the actual span of incoming traffic lanes that we have on the fill. Most everything is profiled when it comes in. So we do know about when it's going to be coming in. And so we can impact, if we've got a bunch of jobs coming in one day, we could maybe push some off the next day if we needed to, yes. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Tom, you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to follow up on this conversation. Do you guys, Nick, ever get back to Minter Bridge Road, and what happens if you do?
Well, we have. We've had a fair amount of trucks come in at once, and our operation, our MO is to not stop the traffic, but get traffic direction out there, and then really bring them in and double them up in the landfill. So we've got a few different scenarios where we can route the traffic before it's gone through the scale around a portion of the landfill to get off the road. And so that takes a few minutes to get them off the traffic, and there's no more impact. So yes, that has happened. It happened once, about 2 months ago now. And it's really an all hands on deck when that happens, and we just get them in, route them around the front end of the landfill and go.
And do you guys have any plans to like expand, 37% over the next 10 years? I'm assuming you said you wouldn't see that right away, right? But in 5 years, 10 years, right, traffic is going to be significantly higher, even with consolidation, I would assume. I mean, we don't know, I guess, but do you have opportunity to, mitigate that further on the site?
So I don't know that we would see a drastic increase in traffic, because a lot of that incoming soil or material would be coming more from transfer stations than it would be from new businesses in the area. Having said that, the other side of it is DEQ actually, restricts our volume. We have a certain amount of volume that's allowed for Hillsboro landfill, and that's how, they don't have an annual tonnage control, but right now we're approved for X amount of volume, airspace, we call it. So without an expansion request and permit through the DEQ, we don't have any plans at this time. No.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Tonnage caps or on the special events? Falcon events for the
Falcons. Maybe the special events and the Falcons can be combined into one.
Yeah.
I would just say, the special events are something that I'll say we asked up front if the Hillsboro landfill could help provide a better outlet for the community in terms of a closer disposal option than, say, Metro Central, because we hear oftentimes that self-haul options on the west side are pretty limited. And this is where we really get into the difficulty between TVWR and Hillsboro landfill being different facility operations. So we are not talking about a franchise agreement for Tualatin Valley Waste Recovery And that is the facility that a garage clean out would self-haul into. It would go into the door, the bays, or they have the Z wall, I think, where folks dump different things into different bins, like they're cleaning out their garage for. So that's not a Hillsboro landfill operation. So Hillsboro landfill can't agree to it in their permit and then ask the TVWR facility to comply with that part of that permit condition. So I understand that legally. We're just trying to ask different ways for the Hillsboro landfill to be a community partner. And one of those ideas was to be a host site for things like special events, or if we wanted to host a bulky waste collection event, or if we got some funding to do some cleanup events and we wanted to invite community members into a space to do some activities along those lines. That is the kind of the intent of that. We're not committing to doing a certain type of event every year, but we want to make sure that Hillsboro landfill is offering its space to be a place to help kind of have some of those community events. And we would do that in partnership and coordination with the folks at Waste Management so that we're working together to achieve common goals, of course.
Some of those slopes seem like they'd be good for sledding. So
yeah, there you go.
Just propose that.
All I need to do is get legal and liability signed off, and I'm there with you. I tell you what, that'll be fun.
You could have the kids indemnify Waste Management on their way up, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'd definitely be good to get a lot of community members out there to see that landfill. I think it's really, really good to see.
I do definitely enjoy tours. As I said during your guys' tour, it's the first I've had in a few years, and I've forgotten that they're actually a lot of fun. So I do appreciate everybody coming out. That was a lot of fun for me.
Any additional questions, comments? If not, I guess we can go to a vote on the action item.
Do we need a motion?
Do we need a motion?
So I move that we favorably recommend to the Board of County Commissioners that they approve the renewal of the franchise agreement.
I second the motion.
Okay, shall I do a roll call? Ashvin.
Yep. Affirmative.
Right on Southwest Beach Drive. Then turn left on Southwest Bayside Road.
Leslie?
Yes, or whatever you say for the yes answer.
Hannah?
Affirmative, yes.
Myra?
Turn left on Southwest Bayside Road.
Sí. Tengo pregunta. Estoy un poco queriendo entender todo el contexto. Disculpen, no sé si es la traducción. Pero esto es para decir crear un vertedero en sí o para expander.
3 miles.
So I would say it's considered a renewal, so it's there already. And they are asking for more opportunity to grow. It's not necessarily a massive expansion of footprint, but more of an ability maybe to put stuff in the existing footprint a little faster than they otherwise would have.
Do you want me to re-motion that?
No, I think it's okay.
Hey, Peter, you're almost home. I can tell by your turn to your GPS.
Myra, did that answer your question, Myra?
Sí, eso. Gracias. Okay, entonces, sí, pues
okay,
favor.
So Myra can vote. Okay. Pete?
Aye, or yes.
Sue?
Yes.
Bernard, do you vote? No? Yes, voting, yes. That's right, yes.
I still got that.
Okay, that completes the voting.
No, aye.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Nick, for joining us and for working with us through this. So,
yeah, thank you all. Very much appreciate it.
Thanks, Nick. So we go into the next item, presentation on safety and disaster planning. I believe that's you, Erin.
That is me. I'm going to apologize. I have some distractions in my household this evening, so give me just a second to get set up. First, Nick, I'm going to boot you out of the room if you don't need to hang on with us any longer.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Wait, do we have the ability to do that? I'm not seeing where you go back to
I can boot
attendee.
myself out.
Okay.
All right. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you. So first of all, I would just like to thank everyone. I was not able to attend last month, which was actually National Disaster Preparedness Month. So we're going to do a October recap of some safety and disaster planning stuff here for the committee this evening. So I'm going to touch on a few different things. As I mentioned, September was actually National Preparedness Month, and government agencies, we prepare for a lot of different types of disasters and scenarios. And I'm just really going to highlight where the Solid Waste and Recycling Division interfaces with a bunch of different types of planning this evening. We're going to talk about how to even define a disaster, some of the region's planning in conjunction with Metro, also planning with the Regional Disaster Preparedness Organization, otherwise known as the RDPO. We're going to talk a little bit about our disaster debris planning, the county's emergency management system, and then kind of cap off the conversation tonight with the Solid Waste and Recycling Continuity of Operations Plan, otherwise known as COOP. I'm going to throw a lot of acronyms out here. So if you need me to repeat anything or you have any questions, feel free to raise your hands. I'm happy to slow down. It's a lot, and sometimes it's a big mouthful for me to even get through. So why have a National Preparedness Month? Well, FEMA wants everybody to plan, protect, and recover. And I thought I'd start off tonight by sharing a resource that FEMA offers. If you go to ready.gov, FEMA not only has developed toolkits for community members, but also for businesses. The theme of this year's National Preparedness Month is a lasting legacy. The life you've built is worth protecting. Prepare for disasters to create a lasting legacy for you and your family. There are, when you go to ready.gov, there's a bunch of toolkits. There is also instructions on how to download the FEMA app. And why should you do that? That app actually offers real-time weather alerts. It's an outlet for sending notifications to loved ones if we are in the middle of an emergency. It can help you locate emergency shelters in your area, and it has a lot of other features. I just would remind everyone to keep in mind that preparedness takes practice, planning, and should be considered throughout the year, regularly at work and at home, and that having a month just highlights the need for preparedness. I'm going to move on to talk a little bit about how you define a disaster. So let's talk a little bit about types of disasters. Here in the Northwest, we can really be prone to a lot of different natural and human caused hazards. As far as natural hazards, we're dealing with winter storms, windstorms, prolonged heat waves, droughts, severe thunderstorms, floods, earthquakes, landslides, wildfires. Those have been very persistent lately. The volcanic eruptions, but even disease outbreaks like the pandemic, we need to be prepared for. And as far as human caused, they could include utility and infrastructure failures, hazardous material releases, transportation incidents, terrorism, cyber attacks, or dam failures. And how these disasters impact us can vary as well. They could be local, regional, or national. And the lines aren't always clear or fixed in nature. A local response would include jurisdiction-specific reactions. For example, during the heat waves, we had some early starts for routes. During snow or ice events, we may actually delay or cancel routes so it's safe for drivers to be on the road. Regional consensus is really key when managing for larger scale events, for example, wildfires or windstorms. This can require a multiple jurisdiction coordination. And this is particularly important when infrastructure is impacted. When the facilities that are actually collecting these materials, sorting, or getting them to their end disposal sites are impacted by closures or having to adjust hours, that impacts everyone. And then in a national event, think the Cascadia subduction event, the big one. Really, our local resources would be overwhelmed, and we'd have to tap into a national support system to help get things cleared up and running. So we've talked a little bit about type and impact. There's also the scope, and the scope can be fluid and changing. Disruptions such as local service delays or the need to adjust schedules. System interference, which can impact the landfills, MRFs, and TSD's abilities to receive the materials. For example, this summer Metro closed stations early due to the heat, and that impacted our self-haul customers. Shutdowns also have and could happen if we just don't have the ability to get out there and process and collect waste. So how does response happen? It starts local, but we always need to consider who our partner organizations are. In-system management requires open and frequent communication pathways between staff and our certificated collection companies. Regional or statewide coordinated responses to events, which can include working with Metro, our neighboring jurisdictions and cities, other county departments, state agencies, and emergency management organizations such as the RDPO and the EMC. Regardless of the type of the event, they all require an assessment, either formal or informal. And staff must make considerations out of how to best maintain or regain community access to our essential collection services. Additional considerations can include finding alternative disposal options if our infrastructure is damaged, or the need to take next steps like implementing the county's debris management plan. So I'm going to talk a little bit about different organizations that we are working with to prepare solid waste and recycling here in Washington County for a disaster. And I'm going to start with Metro. So Metro actually has a really unique role. They are not only a regulator, but they're a systems operator. They have 2 transfer stations, and 40% of our wet waste or our putrescible waste in the area gets routed into those 2 stations. Metro then allocates the remaining tonnage to private transfer stations in the area on an annual basis. Metro also has regulatory oversight. They actually permit facilities in the region, sometimes in tandem with DEQ, sometimes not. Just this year, Metro created a disaster debris reserve fund. It is funded by a $2 and 50-cent per ton fee, which Metro collects on cleanup waste. They anticipate the fund will accumulate about $625,000 a year with a $5 million cap. The intent of this fund will be for local jurisdictions such as ours to apply for funding to help support disaster cleanup efforts. Another role that Metro plays in our preparedness is through the development of the 2030 Regional Waste Plan in partnership with the community and local governments like ours. They actually have 3 goals which are centered specifically to emergency management planning activities. The goals are 17, 18, and 19. And the county is part of their solid waste disaster preparedness work group. I'm representing us along with a member of our emergency management staff, Ken Schlegel. So what are we working on in this group? We're actually just standing this group up, but project ideas are centered around planning activities. So identifying debris collection sites in the region that aren't just on public land, but we could be considering private land as well. We're considering debris and reuse recycling options, and also trying to vet what's reimbursable by FEMA and develop a communications network for the region. Each member of the work group had a chance to vote early on in the planning process and prioritize a number of actions. These aren't in any specific order, but I just wanted to give some examples. 17.4 is development of a database of the existing infrastructure capabilities. So the map on the screen here is from July of 2022, and Metro's kind of mapped all the regional facilities. We'll be utilizing this as a starting point and then assessing what else could be out there to support our emergency response efforts. 17.1 is to develop a regional emergency response and recovery framework. The who, what, when, why, how, and who's going to push out communications. 19.3 is to develop agreements and contracts with service providers or partner jurisdictions. 19.4 is to develop post-disaster strategies for reuse, recycling, and disposal. And 18.5 is develop engineering and financing strategies to facilitate seismic retrofit on public and private infrastructures. And the first action that came out of this work group was that we've actually made it a regional disaster preparedness organization sub work group. And I'll discuss that a little bit more in the next slide. But by participating in this work group and conducting a review of our current processes, we're really working to align the county's solid waste and recycling emergency management response and recovering framework with the 2030 regional waste plan by December of 2024. So the RDPO, it's a local organization. It's really kind of cool. It's a partnership between government agencies, non-government agencies. There's private sector stakeholders. There's 5 counties that take part in it: Clackamas County, Columbia, Multnomah, Washington, and Clark County in Washington. And the organization oversees a variety of work groups with projects that range from 911 dispatch operation coordination to the public works work group. And our subgroup is now part of the public works work group. So who are those people? It's transportation industry, drinking water, wastewater, solid waste, building, grounds, parks, electricity, public fleet, and community infrastructure. So all of the people that keep the things moving in our region. So in August, when we became a subgroup, this just really adds another level of connectivity for all of our jurisdictions that are participating in this Metro work group to be ingrained with an organization that their main focus is preparedness, and they're just experts. So now we just have a more connected framework. We're really excited about this shift, and we have our first meeting as part of that subgroup, I believe, next month. So the county has a disaster debris management plan. And the purpose of this plan is to facilitate and coordinate the management of disaster generated debris. This includes clearance and removal in order to mitigate any potential threat to life, health, safety, welfare of impacted citizens. It prioritizes clearing public right-of-way, but it also can assist with cleanup in impacted properties. A key tenet of this plan is it seeks to expedite recovery efforts in impacted areas and address any significant damage to improved public or private property. It's a very comprehensive plan. It was last updated in 2019. And one of the key metrics is keeping the county in alignment with FEMA's requirements for disaster debris fund reimbursement. It also defines the county's role in relation to jurisdictions located within the county. And it defines the areas of responsibility in unincorporated parts of Washington County. As part of the strategic plan, staff are revisiting the disaster debris plan this fall, and we will make updates to better align with FEMA's current guidance. To tie in with this, the Metro Disaster Debris Fund, which I mentioned earlier, we entered into a joint MOU with Metro. So this MOU further defines the county's role, Metro's role, and it will play, how this will really be important is FEMA will only typically reimburse for a portion of the funds, or they may actually not reimburse for certain types of activities. And that Metro fund is something we could apply for to cover the gap in some of the cost. So the county's role for emergency management, I'm just barely scratching the surface here.
Erin, can we pause for a minute for a question?
Yeah.
Sue, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Erin, I just wanted to ask, in the debris management plan, I guess I'm curious about, the public. I understand you're looking at this from, way up here. How, is there any talk about how that gets down to, communities or a plan for telling people about that? Is that part of your discussion?
It is a huge part of the discussion. The number one priority is clearing the right-of-way to critical locations such as our hospitals. But really, when it comes down to, we want to mitigate all risks to health. And that can include picking up household hazardous waste. That can include getting appliances, which are considered, they're called white goods, out for recycling. The construction and demolition debris that can come along with a flooding event or an earthquake, getting that out to either a centralized picked up and a self-haul, or out to the curb for crews to come by and actually manage that. So it's not just the public right away in the debris plan. It actually does help with private. Now, there are some areas where FEMA will offer direct assistance to homeowners. That's a different program, but through this program, we can offer assistance to community members. There gets to be some legalities as far as, can we enter their property? You need a bunch of waivers and you have to meet a bunch of criteria to actually do that. But as far as a homeowner maybe dragging stuff to the end of their driveway and setting out on the curb, that is all prepared for in this plan.
So is it the thought then that really that information will be distributed if there were an event where people would need to be doing or knowing what to do, I guess. So
yeah,
that won't go out to John Q. Public until there is an event, and then everyone is going to be telling us what we need to do.
Yeah, I think because the challenges of the laundry list of events that I've shared,
sure,
how we respond is going to be so different. But the messaging developed around that also could be different. It could be very much that curbside is great and that works. It may be more of, we need you to self-haul to this collection point. It may be that we're able to partner with our garbage haulers, depending on the material, for a curbside set out with your garbage materials. It's going to look very dynamic and different in every event. But there is I just spent 4 days in this FEMA training to learn about disaster debris planning, and we spent just a half a day on communication plans and the resources that are out there. Are you going door to door with flyers because all of our telecommunications are down and you want people to know what to do? Is it a snowstorm and powers back up and people have cell phones and we can push out messages maybe through our garbage and recycling day app, through social media, about what individuals should be doing? So yeah, it's going to look very different, but it's obviously information is key when you're in an event. Right. Because the other thing is a lot of times volunteers will step up, and then you have to manage for that, who's actually authorized to be helping and who's not. And so you want to be really clear in your messaging.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Aaron, I was just going to kind of build off what you're saying. I think is great. When I was doing a lot of this work, 5-6 years ago, most of the experience comes from the South and the Southeast in hurricane recovery and hurricane response. And it's really impressive, the FEMA, the teams that FEMA deploys, and they're also at the same time as deploying like a debris recovery mission or debris cleanup mission, they'd be deploying like a person, I think they call it private assistance. So it's like household assistance that goes in and helps people. Like, do you have insurance? And if you don't have insurance, how much money can FEMA help you to repair your house? And so there's like teams of neighborhood canvassers that go through and help identify the types of responses, and it's all staged really pretty well in terms of going through neighborhoods. And that's like a hurricane cleanup, and that's a lot of woody debris and piles and stuff. So like Aaron said, it really depends on what you're dealing with. If it's an earthquake response, it's going to look very different than if it was a windstorm response. So it is a massive undertaking either way, I think, and it would be and communications is critical. One of the things that the EOC does as well when there's an event like this, the Emergency Operations Center, is they stand up what they call joint information centers. And there is a discussion regionally about working together as a region to have like a joint information center for something like this. So there would be basically the recycling information center in Metro could turn into a call center for disaster recovery for debris, and it just is answering questions and pointing people to the right resources and right places in terms of how they get their needs met and the materials disposed off their properties. So it can be a massive operation.
Okay, shall we move on? So the county's emergency management system, which Tom just alluded to, talking about our EOC, we actually have 7 full-time staff and 1 part-time staff members here at the county that all they are focused on is emergency preparedness. And then they actually fund 1 full-time staff who manages the emergency management cooperative. The main mission is to minimize the major effects of emergencies and disaster on the community. They work through risk reduction strategies and actions. They work on agency preparedness. offer effective coordination, as Tom mentioned, between local, regional, state, and federal agencies. And they try to integrate these activities into programs and planning activities. There's a long list of partners, which include internal work groups to the county. So our COOPs, which are Continuity of Operations Coordinators. I'm one of those for solid waste and recycling. It includes local cities, service districts, the regional preparedness organizations, such as the RDPO, the state agencies, such as the Office of Emergency Management, ODOT. Then there's even NGOs present, like the American Red Cross. And this EMC that I mentioned that we oversee, it's comprised of Washington County, the cities of Beaverton, Cornelius, Forest Grove, Hillsboro, North Plains, Sherwood, Tigard, Tualatin, and then also Clean Water Services and the Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue. They offer trainings and tools for disaster preparedness and offer current condition updates. So they're a really great regional resource. And then to keep staff members prepared, we have just recently transitioned to the Everbridge system. Everyone in Health and Human Services, which is where solid waste and recycling is housed, should be signed up for the Everbridge. It's a great system. It allows you to select how you want to be notified from, in case there's an emergency, email, text, call, all of the above. And this is set up for internal. So if we have maybe an active shooter in one of our buildings or other pertinent information we need to push out, they would utilize the Everbridge system. But I will say the state also utilizes Everbridge, and this is available to all community members. If you go to www.oralert.gov, you can sign up for alerts. And as again, you can locate, you can select multiple locations. So maybe you have set a home location and you're also concerned about your mother living in a different city. You can set an alert for that location as well here in the state. So just a blanket way to get notifications in the case of bad events happening here. And like I said, I just barely touched on this. You can go to the county's emergency management website, just a wealth of information and resources. So I'm going to wrap up tonight talking about COOP. Everybody should have a COOP. What's a COOP? It's continuity of operations planning. We actually use a database through Bold Planning. We're going to be transferring to a new, more web-based system in the near future, but I still thought I'd share this just because it really highlights what the structure of a good COOP is. We've got general information about our solid waste and recycling division. We save key contacts. You all are in our COOP. We need to know where our garbage and recycling advisory members are. We can save all of our procedures, really anything that ties in to keeping our operations running here at the county lives in this database. And the important part about a COOP is that it's a living and breathing resource. So the pandemic taught us a great lesson that we thought we needed a printed off version because we would all be inaccessible. And here we are in a matter of a few days, we were able to get ourselves positioned to be working from home. And really, operations continued with just minor disruptions. So we had to do some tweaking in our procedures in the COOP to account for that. As staff change or new GRAC members are added, we'll go in and we update our system. As our critical partners with other local jurisdictions or metro change, we also will go in. The nice thing about this is you can run a report and have a couple 100-page hard copy binder that is there in case we do lose power. And Tom and I both have access to do this. And we have a copy at our office at PSB that's accessible. So we've really prioritized COOP planning as a division. We've just seen that service disruptions have become a frequent year-round occurrence. It used to just be maybe winter weather. Now it's smoke, wildfire, ice, all of it. So we would just really encourage everybody that's running a business or to ask, does your business have a COOP? Because it's really a useful tool. We even created an internal Teams page to keep our staff up to date on safety trainings or opportunities that arise that can make us all be more prepared. So the best step any organization can take to prepare for a disaster is and maintain operations is to have a COOP. And with that, I know I threw a lot of acronyms at you this evening. If you have any questions or you need me to clarify anything, I'm certainly happy to do so.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Looks like Tom, good question.
Yeah, just going to ask Aaron if you could talk a little bit about, and you might have touched on it a little bit with the regional waste plan topics, but some of the things that we plan on working on with within our system over the next 3 or 4 years in regards to emergency planning, and just thinking about COOP plans as being one of those things, and ensuring that our franchise haulers have COOP plans, those kinds of things.
I guess I'm not really prepared for that. You're talking about strategic plan ideas, which I don't have in front of me. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I just think, you know, our goal 4 in our strategic plan, and we'll shift into that conversation next, but is all around resiliency. And I think this topic area, so it's really relevant. And like I said, I'll stop and we'll talk more about the plan in a minute.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not prepared for that one.
Sue, go ahead. You're on mute, Sue. So.
Oh, sorry. So I know that I've heard of a COOP plan in the past. I'm sure it just comes under lots of different acronyms. I mean, different organizations might have a different type of plan. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting, like we have a safety plan, which is different than a continuity of operations plan, but often they're integrated. There's components that might be the same. It's really the who, what, when, why, where, and how, those basic components of who will keep your organization going. What do you need? A basic to get it off the ground. So starting with like day 1, how do you get things to go live versus day 30 might look very different if you're working through your COOP plan. And it's kind of like we talked about the type of disaster. When we have inclement weather, just the basic of our COOP is good communication. And that starts with connecting with all of our certificated haulers. How are they doing? Getting a baseline for how things are operating. How about the in facilities? Are they experiencing closures or difficulties? But you have to have the contacts accessible to make those calls in the event that power's out or cell phone towers down, et cetera.
Yeah, that's awesome, I think.
I've heard them called business continuity plans is another common, I think, term too. Sue.
Great.
Aaron, I have a question. So I think it's very interesting stuff. I think we've all experienced some of this over the past year, like you've mentioned, as things increase. I was curious, like the current state, if I'm trying to like understand what our current plans are. For instance, I think we had a snow day last year and my hauler did not pick up that week, and they specifically just didn't pick up yard debris. And I was just, I guess at this point, is it just all individuals are making that decision on an individual hauler basis? And I guess more generally, just like, how do I understand what those, like the current state of that regulations are? And because I think you walked through a lot of details that you mentioned that there's more detail somewhere. Was that a specific link that I can look at to see it? Because I've seen like the RDPO, that seems more like general. So like, how do I know like what our current state is? And then how do I kind of like track where we're going in more detail?
Yeah, so our admin rules really lay out kind of the basic when it comes to inclement weather. And I could kick that to Kathy for the deep dive in any admin rule.
I don't think I need the details. I just, where it's located, I think would be good.
Yeah, so as far as the information goes, we push that up on our website. So if we're in the middle of an active event, the best place to go is going to be to come to the county's website. The individual haulers will make independent decisions. We might say we're going to allow collections to start early or know that collections may start late. We're going to point you back to those individual service providers' websites for their most current conditions. Of course, we're coordinating and talking with them. But yeah, the county's website's a great resource. And then as more things come to light, we will push out notifications on that garbage day and recycling day app. So if something's going to be delayed with your service and we're aware of it, we have the ability to push out those changes.
So do you guys declare that emergency and then people react to it, or can the individual haulers decide that it's outside of their scopes? I know you've mentioned some like between Metro and yourselves, there's been, I just more curious about like between the hauler and the staff currently, how, I know there's no definitions in place necessarily for disaster, but is there a chain of command?
Yeah, so we, in the rules, we've requested that they report to, we have a hauler reporting inbox by 6 a.m. if they're expecting service impacts. That's great if it happened the day before or overnight, but it could be happening in the middle of the day. And that really just comes to reporting to us and to Tom as a department what the situation is, and then we can effectively and hopefully communicate as one. I will say a key tenet and why this Metro regional work group is really important is there isn't regional consistency right now on how we're responding. And so if you take 30 or 40 agencies and we're all interfacing with 60 or 75 different haulers, there isn't one single pathway. Not that we may ever get that to that point, but we certainly can tighten things up. And that's a lot of the work I'll be supporting in that Metro, now the RDPO subgroup, over the next couple of years. But I want to defer to Kathy because her hand's up and she's our code expert.
You're on mute, Kathy. Kathy, you're still on mute.
I should have learned from Sue. I was just going to say that one of the, if we step back for a minute, partly the reason that we do allow the haulers some discretion is they serve differing types of territory throughout the region. I mean, if you're in one of the, like where SWATCO serves, for example, you're going up some pretty steep roads up into the hills, and the rules assume that haulers don't have to provide service that is going to be a risk to either their equipment or to the drivers or helpers that are on the trucks. The other thing that we've added to the rules recently is that if service is missed, the county does have the ability to prioritize which materials will be collected first. So garbage first, and that sometimes has been difficult for some of our customers, because if you have every other week recycling and it's not picked up because it's not the #1 priority, you might go as much as a month where you have to store your recycling, but it's because it doesn't have the same, health hazards that exist with not picking up the garbage first. So those are the couple of things. We don't want haulers to be harmed, to potentially have drivers that are harmed. And it's just because the county covers so many different types of territory, from being maybe in close to the cities where the roads are all plowed, to being up in the hills where there's 5 feet of snow and you can't get through. So
the only thing I would add is we also have I think the county has a general hesitation to determine risk on behalf of a private company like one of the garbage haulers. So we don't want to say, we think it's safe for you to operate today, so you must operate, and then something happens, and then it's a liability of us assuming the determination of risk for that company. But what we can do as regulators is we can say, if you miss because of hazardous conditions, this is how you have to make it up. And we set the rules for how it's made up. And I think that's an area where we need to focus on a little more, to remind what the rules are for makeup. The rules say that if you miss one day, you got to pick it up the next day. You can't just miss one day and push everybody out the whole next week. The rules say if it's an extended event, like a snowstorm, and it lasts more than one day, they can delay it for the next week. So I think there's some cleanup that can happen in that, but that's another part of that consideration. And then, as Aaron mentioned, trying to get on the same page. Now we're talking about heat index and what is an appropriate maximum heat to call or change or adjust operations. Is it 95? Is it 100? And if we're different than Metro, and Metro's closing the transfer stations, that causes problems. And then hazardous air conditions, what's the threshold for the PM 2.5 or the hazardous air condition index that DEQ publishes for when we would say it's okay to curtail those operations. So those are all conversations ongoing, and I think there's fine tuning that can definitely happen in there. And we'll get more and more of those every year. This year we were struggling with the heat events over and over again.
I was going to say exactly what Kathy said. So I'm glad that we're right on the same page. The haulers looked at that, but I'm involved with an Aura group that's a lot of haulers, and they during the beginning of the pandemic, they were looking, do we have to prioritize? Are we going to be able, if we don't have drivers, or what are we going to do? So even that, it was like, okay, garbage, and then yard debris, because those will rot, and then recycling, because typically it's gonna be dry and it's gonna hold. So yeah, there's just a lot of variables for everybody. Like Kathy said, there's, if you have flatland routes, it's different than being in the West Hills. And so yeah, there's just lots of nuance.
Any other questions or comments on this agenda topic?
I would also just note, Ashvin, if you go to the webpage, WashingtonCountyRecycles.com, on the main menu bar on the right side, all the way, second to the last one is severe weather. And there's a web page with some information and FAQs about severe weather. I will say that's almost exclusively focused on snowstorms right now, so it needs some more work in terms of heat and air quality events, for example. But it's that will be the resource that we need to continue to build out to provide better information.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I think clear communication is just good and consistent. I spent some time arguing with my hauler when they didn't pick something up. I couldn't figure out what they were supposed to do, but it wasn't that big of an issue. Anything else on this? Or we can close it out and move on to the next agenda topic. I don't know if you want to jump into it, Tom, with the strategic planning.
Sure. Thanks, Ashvin. So I don't have much prepared. I just wanted to kind of have this time set aside as an opportunity to talk a little bit more and receive any further feedback. I know we gave a very wordy and maybe boring presentation last month. And then Kathy followed up with a draft of the strategic plan itself. So we do have the plan. It has those 5 goal areas. The goal area 1 is kind of an equity focused goal area. 2 was really focusing on our core services like solid waste collection and disposal regulation. 3 is looking at upstream messaging and materials reduce and reuse. And then 4 is this emergency preparedness and resiliency planning. And then 5 is really focused internally on the division in terms of being a choice employer and treating our employees well. So if anyone has any feedback or input, we would love to take it or receive it. If you don't, that's perfectly okay too. We'll assume you read it and you think it's really wonderful and fancy and that you all think we are on the right track. So I'll just leave it there. And if there's anything in particular you have questions about or an area you want to zoom in on and think about or talk about more, I'd be happy to do that. We can talk a little bit more about some of those resiliency things if that's timely based on Erin's presentation, but I don't want to take up time and air in this evening if that's not of interest to you all too. So.
Sorry, Tom, to clarify, did you have a specific topic you wanted to cover, or is it just open discussion on?
Open discussion, anything on the plan, if there's questions or input, we welcome it.
Anything from the committee members? Questions or concerns? Feedback? I missed the last meeting and I still need to catch up on that, so I will do my due diligence.
Yeah, take your time.
In the near future.
There's no hard deadline on this. We're still kind of polishing the final draft, and we hope to have it in some final draft form in the next month or so, and then we're going to try to make it a little bit pretty with some graphic design and layout work, and then we have kind of starting to build an internal facing form of the plan that we use as a work planning tool over the next couple of years. So hopefully it'll help us kind of coalesce around these goals and focus our work a little bit more on our what we see as our core missions going forward.
Does this go to the commissioners?
It does not. It's an internal work plan, basically. Well, if there's no comments, I don't have anything else. And like I said, feel free to send us feedback over time too, and we'll happily take it and look at it.
Thanks, Tom. We will do that. And maybe just back up to Erin's topic. Erin, did you have another touch point that people should be looking for? I know you mentioned the 2024 is when the plan is supposed to be. Are we revisiting this topic again for the disaster planning?
Yeah, I think it's going to be ongoing. We'll really just see where our work with Metro goes. And as Tom mentioned, we've embedded a lot of this work into our strategic plan. So as we lay that out over the next couple of years, I'm sure we'll be returning to this group with updates. And ideally, in the next couple of years, we'll have that regional framework and alignment, and maybe it wouldn't just be me here presenting, but some key community partners as well.
Thanks. Yep. Well, thanks, staff. A lot of good work across the board. Detailed, clean, very nice. I guess last item is oral communication. See if we have anybody signed up. I raised my hand.
Yeah, I saw your hand, but no, one attendee, no hands raised at this point.
Our alumni, Beth, joining us.
Yeah.
Great. Well, if there's nothing else, we can call it. I don't think we need a motion to close the meeting. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
have a wonderful
night. See
night.
you in November. Bye.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for attending the October 13th Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee meeting. As mentioned, this meeting was recorded. It will be posted to our website within 7 days. Thank you.